welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now,
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, it has been what seems like forever since I've actually made it to locals, and I've actually made it to locals today, and we've got a different deck. Yes, we are here and we are actually playing Rescue Ace Fiendsmith. Now I've just turned up to locals and I just realized that I did not put Fiendsmith in Paradise in my bag, so that's going to be one card I'm going to try and source before locals starts. But to say the least, I am super rusty. I've been doing a bit of testing, but it just never compares to in-game play or in-person play for that matter. So I'm going to be a bit rusty, but I'm going to record as many duels as I can, or as my opponent lets me, and just to kind of like see where I'm at with regards to play. I'm halfway through building Malice, so that might potentially be coming up in terms of playability on the channel. And I've got a regional. Hopefully I can get to the regional next week, and I might either play this deck or Malice. But anyway, without wasting any more of your time, ladies and gents, let's just get straight into it. Okay, ladies and gents, so we are straight into round one, and this was an interesting match playing against my buddy Joe. Now I thought I'd do this slightly differently, just because I also like to, when I go to locals, I like to kind of like record my own gameplay regardless if I'm going to make a video or not, mainly because it allows me to just kind of like see exactly what mistakes I'm making, see what my opponent's doing, look at patterns of play, it's just a whole host of things. And I really like Yu-Gi-Oh for the fact that it's more than just playing the cards. Like sometimes I'll put my cards down, I look at my opponent's reactions when they're drawing cards, when they're placing cards, how they place cards down, what they do when they feel like they've got an advantage in terms of like what they're playing or how they're sequencing things. It just really makes for a bit more of a whole holistic experience. So I tend to kind of like focus a lot on what my opponent's doing, which is why I need to be comfortable with a deck when I'm playing it. Now, playing Rescue Ace, I'm playing against my buddy Joe here. He's playing Rescue Ace Fiendsmith, and I actually bowed, I think it was the Engraver. The Lacrima hit is so crucial. Now I know previously he used to hit the Fiendsmith sequence, but there are a few other choke points which I will point out later on in the obviously the video, because I've had a chance to like have a think about exactly how locals went. But about the Engraver, which meant that he was forced to end on a bit of an awkward play. Managed to make Chaos Angel, still had a couple of hand traps in hand. He also had the Desiree Send, which was really rough going into game one, and I managed to play through it all, which was fantastic, mainly because I think people were shotgunning their effects. They wasn't too sure about how to interact with some of the Rescue Ace cards because they haven't seen them in a while. So I believe I summoned the Turbulence with the Emergency and then tributed the Turbulence, and then I used Preventer to banish the Turbulence for its summon. And then when Preventer was summoned, my opponent shotgun the Fiendsmith Lacrima to dump the Fiendsmith in Paradise, to then obviously get the Desiree Send, and he sent my Preventer to graveyard, which then triggered the Preventer to bring back the Turbulence, which was a nice little bit of a play just to kind of like play around some of the hand traps. Now if it had been a little bit more well versed in Rescue Ace, he probably would have kind of foresaw that play basically and just not played into it, which was a difficult one, because basically what would have happened was I would have linked off my two monsters potentially for like, I don't know, a Moon of the Closed Sky, or even like a SP Little Knight, and then proceeded to do my stuff from there. So it would have been really difficult for him to kind of like facilitate what was going on. But nonetheless, Turbulence resolves. Set 4 always puts you at a huge advantage, so I managed to take game 1. Game 2, same scenario. I believe I won like one dice roll for the whole locals event, and yeah, it meant that I was going second a lot. I didn't actually side at all for this event, which is crazy, and I'll tell you why later on towards the end of the video. But going into game 2 of round 1, I just got cooked. I tried to play through his board. He set up the usual Rise Your board, and I just couldn't play through it. I didn't see enough hand traps. I kind of broke through a few things, and then I got hit with Nibiru, and all my extenders, all my plays, all my setup had just literally just been folded in half in one foul swoop. So it was fair to say that I got cooked. And then in game 3, I actually went first, which was surprising, and I managed to kind of like set up. Now I started off my plays summoning the Airlifter, which was interesting, mainly because it got me straight into the the Rescue Ace Emergency, which was nice because I got drilled afterwards. So because I got drilled and I actually opened the turbulence, it was a little bit nice. So what I did was I searched for, well, I emergencyed for my Rescue Ace Hydrant, sent the impulse, and then managed to resolve turbulence with no interruption. So just completely played around draw, which is something which is a big reason why I really like this deck, because of that fact that you can kind of like play around like Fawaros in some instances, which I'll talk about later. But you can play around Fawaros, you can play around Droll, you can play really low to the ground, and set 4 with turbulence is a bit of a problem, especially when you've got a live hydrant on the field. So really strong in that regards, but managed to take game 1 against Rescue Ace Fiendsmith, which was interesting. So yeah, on to the next round. So stepping into round number 2 and another interesting quote-unquote meta match, this time playing against Pure Rizio, going up against my buddy Steve, and this was an interesting one mainly because of some of the interactions that obviously could have been avoided. Now game 1, he started with, I believe it was Sword Rizio, Sword Rizio, and typically what I found is Sword Rizal is obviously not the most optimal starter. That's kind of like the card that you want to use for extension basically, and when I seen him drop it as a normal summon, I thought to myself, you know what, this has to be a poor hand for him to be starting with this. So I proceeded to Ash. He actually chained the Crossout Designator, which was a little bit rough, but I actually had an Imperm in hand as well, so I decided to Imperm it, and lo and behold, it actually telegraphed that I was actually correct, because he couldn't really do much past that. I proceeded to do some plays. I think I got 2 bodies on field. I did what I was doing, and then I went into an SP Little Knight before I managed to activate the turbulence effect. So obviously when he tried to chain the Vader, obviously chained the Little Knight, turbulence, and the Little Knight went off field, managed to set my 4 cards, and I'll be honest, setting 4 from turbulence is a mad adrenaline rush, knowing that you're just getting so much advantage out of one card. It's crazy. The add back, the pop, the imperm, it's very strong, and it can be a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for, a focal point of the deck where you feel like you just need to just like turbo into turbulence basically. I call him big turbs. You probably, you'll hear me calling big turbs throughout the video, but you kind of feel like you need to do that, where you don't actually need to, but because it's such of a strong effect, your opponent's definitely going to be cognizant of the fact that you're going to try and resolve that, which is where the Fiendsmith's cards come into play. So I managed to set 4 up turbulence, and you just couldn't play after that. Just way too much advantage with regards to what the Rescue Ace Fiendsmith deck can do. Game 2 of round 2, this was rough. So I didn't have the most optimal of hands. I think I drew Ghost Bow, which I put in the deck because it is a strong card, but typically just to address the plugin. But that was the only form of interaction that I had on my turn. Sorry, his turn, going first. And he managed to set up Duo Drive, Field Spell, Detonator, and Baguska, and that is literally an FTK, ladies and gents. Like, I couldn't do a thing, couldn't set any cards. It was really rough. So unfortunately, that's all I could do. Couldn't really do much else. Managed to just scoop that game, and then going into game 3, very solid. I think I played through a couple of interruptions. Just refresh myself slightly. I played through a few interruptions, and I believe I ended on a Chaos Angel, just because I couldn't resolve some of my cards. And then it's obviously getting into the Fiendsmith stuff is just absolutely crazy, especially on your opponent's turn. So I believe after the Chaos Angel, I summoned a Lacrima back off the Requiem, because I had Lacrima in graveyard, and then did the Desiree stuff, and it's literally all she wrote, ladies and gents. My opponent just couldn't recover. So big shout out to Steve. He did overextend, which is unfortunate. Like, he had the field spell up, he had game on board, and I think he was going into Dagaris to double the detonator's attack. I tried to bow his sword, and he negated it with the field spell, and then I obviously then on resolution, or on the resolution of the sword effect, I actually nibbed his board, which just put him in a rough spot overall, and I managed to clear the token and then just kind of like claw my way back into the game, which was really unfortunate for him, and I think he got a little bit tilted because of it. But yeah, hey ho, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! He potentially would have obviously been in a better position had he played lower to the ground and not used the field spell to negate the bow, but it is what it is. He couldn't have telegraphed that I had anything else, so yeah. Anyway, managed to win game 2, so on to the next round. So coming into round 3, and I'm playing against Fiendsmith Chimera, which was a little bit of a shock to the system, mainly because I think the first game I didn't see any of the Chimera stuff, and he just went full Fiendsmith combo, ended on a High Wave King Caesar. And I decided to interact with the Caesar, which probably proved my downfall, but obviously I wasn't to know what he had in hand. So I actually used Nib. He changed Caesar to negate, and then I decided to Ghost Ogre. Excuse me, just to remove the Caesar off the field, mainly because obviously Caesar's a bit of a problem, especially with Rescue Ace, because it can negate the emergency, it can negate any of the bigger Rescue Ace monsters that special summon themselves, like is it like Fire Attacker or Fire Engine, all that kind of stuff. So I was a little bit frustrated. I thought, you know what, let me just get rid of it, and it kind of proved to work in their favor, mainly because my opponent then just obviously dropped Fualas on me, which was a big problem, just because I had to play into the Fualas to be able to kind of like facilitate some kind of a board, and I managed to get part way through like dismantling some of the negates that he had, but then I got hit with a rock. And then that was all she wrote. Obviously I got hit with a rock. I had talents. I probably should have used talents to look at hand, but I thought to myself, do you know what, I'm so behind on card advantage, I just need more cards. So I decided to draw off the talents. Talents got ashed, which was rough, and then obviously the emergency resolved, and then I just got hit with a rock, so I couldn't actually use my turbulence or even use the 2 bodies to kind of like go into some Fiendsmith play. So that was really, really rough. Round 3, game 2, I actually managed to win this one, mainly because I think I started off with searching the airlifter, which was a little bit of a risky play because I ran into Droll in the previous game, and it kind of like tilted me in a sense where I was thinking, Droll might just be in everyone's side deck now, so I need to kind of like be cognizant of the fact. But I played into it anyway, and I got rewarded the fact that my opponent didn't have Droll. Went search off airlifter, it got veiled, and I had to set one pass. And what completely threw me is when my opponent just kind of like climbed into Desiree using the Fiendsmith stuff, climbed into sequence, and then went to use Desiree's effect and sequence effect to summon Desiree, and a chained Imperm, and then the chained Chimera fusioning off the Nibiru that he had in hand, as well as the sequence on field, which just absolutely threw me and made a Magnum the reliever, and that just I didn't know what was going on. So it then ended up on the Desiree anyway. It did a whole host of damage, and yeah, but fortunately for me, obviously I had a Preventer in hand, and I also had a Rescue Ace Hydrant, and my opponent forgot, obviously you can't target Hydrant with card effects whilst there's another Rescue Ace monster on field, and I also had Preventer on field, so I was able to kind of like put 2 bodies on field, search the Turbulence, and then obviously from there it was just full Fiendsmith combo alongside the set 4 from the Rescue Ace portion of the deck, and my opponent could just see this and he just decided to scoop it up. Game 3, obviously I was going second, and it was just rough. Like, it just had every answer for everything that I had. I think I tried to Impulse, it got Ash, no, Impulse got Core by the Grave, I believe he had Ash. I just couldn't get any plays going, and he had so much card advantage, it was absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, round 3, I just got absolutely cooked. I think the match was over in like 20 minutes, if that. So yeah, I just got absolutely destroyed by Fiendsmith Chimera, which it is what it is. Unfortunately, for some reason, ladies and gents, round 4 just would not record, but I did manage to win round 4. I think I was playing against some Horus pile, but to be honest, the game was over in about 17 minutes. My opponent didn't see much in the way of extension, and in both games I seen 2 hand traps, and I managed to resolve Turbulence twice, which is obviously a wrap. And I think one of the craziest things that I've been taken away from this deck is being able to resolve Turbulence twice in one game. Like, resolving it once in one game is already like puts you way ahead in terms of card advantage, but resolving it twice is just an absolute blowout. Like, I think I did it twice today where I resolved Turbulence and then I was able to use the field spell to shuffle back all the materials that Turbulence sets from deck to be able to then Turbulence again, which I think is absolutely crazy, but a very, very fun way to play the deck. And my opponent just got destroyed. I think he went into Zombie Vampire and he had the gold sarcophagus. Was it gold sarcophagus? The Horus sarcophagus thingy, the continue spell. Had that on field, and then he summoned Kebesen UF because it kind of like protects the Kebesen UF from being destroyed by battle. So there was a few things that was going on, but I managed to SP banish the back row, and then I managed to clear the field basically, and there was just left on no cards, and I had set 4 as well as I think I had like a preventer on field, so I could just book a moon on one side. It was too overwhelming, ladies and gentlemen, put it that way. And then on top of that, I just had Fiendsmith cards, which is just crazy as it is. So I managed to win round 4 very, very quickly, very convincingly. So let's move on to round 5. So 5th and final round, and once again I'm playing against Rescue Ace Fiendsmith. Like, I've literally just played meta more or less all day, apart from like the odd Horus pile. And to be honest, ladies and gents, this was an absolute blowout in the way of my opponent. My opponent just absolutely cooked me. Now, it was 2-1, but it doesn't reflect the nature of the game, mainly because round 1, I don't know how we got to it, but I got double Fualos, and me, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna play. So I decided to play just to try and establish some kind of a board, because I wasn't in a position where I could just kind of stop and make a low powered board. I had to do stuff which kind of played into the Fualos in order to set up a field, and that cooked me. And then I think I resolved, I believe it was the Requiem effect, and then I got another Fualos chain to it, so it was like drawing like 9 or so cards. And then at the end of all of that, I got nipped. So that was just an absolute blowout. It was just it was ridiculous. Game 2, again, he threw a couple of hand traps at me. Didn't see the hand traps that he wanted, but I managed to win game 2 mainly because he just couldn't play the game. He actually showed me his hand afterwards, and I believe it was Engraver Tract, which he only plays 2 tract, and obviously he had 2 engravers, which was just crazy. So there was literally nothing he could do. So he just lost that game. And then game 3 of round 5, which is the penultimate round, it was the nature of how I lost. It was crazy. Like, basically, it wasn't allowing me to just keep 2 monsters on field, and obviously that allows me to go into some of my Fiendsmith stuff. So not being able to just keep the bodies on field just puts me in such a bad position. And I think I had the fire attacker as well as the field spell in hand, so after I put a couple of bodies on field, I couldn't extend any further. I didn't have access to the Fiendsmith stuff, and it was just a wrap. I think he sent one of the monsters off Desiree, negated the hydrant search, and that was all she wrote. And you know, the funniest thing is, and this is why I did not side all game. I got to locals, I was late, I was trying to find a Fiendsmith in Paradise. I managed to find one, and then I was sleeving up my deck trying to sort out my ratios and all that kind of stuff. And then time for round 1 just got called, so I was just like, I was halfway like sleeving up my thing, so I had to quickly just like sleeve stuff up. I didn't include a relinquished anima in the extra deck, so I was a little bit tilted off that anyway. So I was like, you know what, I'm not siding, I'm just gonna play with whatever I got. And to be honest, if I decided and actually sorted out my ratios, I think I was at like 48 cards in deck. There was at least 3 or 4 cards that should not have been in there that I just didn't have a chance to take out, and I didn't put my relinquished anima in. I also didn't put a Typhon in, which was another thing that I wanted to put in there, and it was so rough, ladies and gents. So I just couldn't, I was just frustrated in that sense. So I just played with the cards that I had literally in my deck, which it seemed to fare well, but obviously it could be a little bit more optimal, which is what I'm going to be going to do in the future. But all in all, I managed to finish X2, 5 rounds, playing more or less meta. Did not run into any malice, which was really, really interesting to see. I feel like people have kind of shied away from malice just because of the complexity of the deck, and the fact that there's no single best way to play at the moment. There's more optimal ways, which is obviously subjective, but for the most part it's not a solved deck, unlike Rizio, which is very simple. It has a straightforward game plan, and you're going to see a lot of people interacting with it. Now, in terms of what I've learned, Bao is definitely a good card. Obviously I made a video about it previously, but actually using it and seeing it in action, like, it shuts down so many, it stuns so many people. Like, a lot of people are coming up to me and saying, you know what, Bao's solid. Like, it's, especially in this format where you got a lot of things that are messing around with the graveyard, is very solid. And it was also interested in some of the ways that you interact with the Fiendsmith monsters. Now, this actually takes a little bit of game knowledge or game sense. Interacting with both the engraver as well as the main deck Lacrima is vitally important. I actually attempted to ghost ogre main deck Lacrima, and it would have put my opponent in a precarious position, mainly because it would have removed the body off field, which is important to go into any kind of like extra deck plays, whether that's Necro Crypt Princess, whether that's Caesar, whether that's the sequence. It's really vital that those bodies stay on field, and just removing one of those bodies just makes it very difficult for your opponent to just then completely extend, to the point where my opponent actually cross-out designated my ghost ogre, which I thought was crazy, the fact that he had one cross-out designator in, and two, he still had ghost ogre in the main. So yeah, it's important to know when to interact with your opponent, and it doesn't always have to be the sequence when you're looking at like some of the Fiendsmith cards. But all in all, ladies and gents, a solid locals. It's good to be back playing. I'm probably going to play this deck again if my Malice cards don't arrive, and we're going to obviously see how we do. But like I said, we find ourselves at the end of another video. If you did enjoy this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of those beautiful good stuff. And I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.